There's a terrifying secret hidden in the margins of the history of philosophy, a detail that Carl Jung perceived and that made him tremble before the genius of Friedrich Nietzsche. It wasn't syphilis that destroyed Nietzsche's mind. Jung knew the truth. Nietzsche didn't just write Zarathustra. He was possessed by him. Imagine opening a door inside your own mind expecting to find wisdom, but instead being greeted by an entity so ancient and powerful that it expels you from your own consciousness. Jung spent his entire life studying Nietzsche not out of academic admiration, but out of fear. He looked at the philosopher of the hammer and saw his own reflection in the mirror, a bloody warning of what happens when a mortal tries to touch the divine without having their feet planted in hell. What Jung discovered about psychic inflation and the mana personality is not just theory. It is a survival map for anyone who dares to look inside themselves. Before we descend together into this abyss, I need to give you a warning. This channel is not for those seeking comfort. Here, we explore the corridors of the human psyche where few have the courage to tread. If you want to understand the invisible forces that control your destiny, if you want to master your shadow before it masters you, subscribe now. Do not be just a passive spectator of your own life. Like this video to signal that you seek deep truth, and comment below, I control my shadow. Let's see how many of us are truly awake. Jung grew up in a Basel haunted by the ghostly presence of Nietzsche. Although they never met physically, the figure of the professor who went mad hovered over the university and the city's intellectual life like a black cloud. For the young Jung, Nietzsche was not just an author. He was a clinical case and a living myth. Jung saw on the streets the same places where Nietzsche walked before his collapse, creating an immediate psychic connection. He felt that both carried the same burden, the knowledge that God, as an institution, was dead, and that something new and terrible needed to be born in the human psyche to fill that void. When Jung opened the pages of Thus Spoke Zarathustra for the first time, he didn't see literature. He saw a psychic hemorrhage. He described the experience as witnessing a volcano exploding. Nietzsche, in his solitude and genius, broke the barriers separating the conscious ego from the collective unconscious. The images that flooded the book were not created by Nietzsche's intellect. They invaded his consciousness. Jung identified that the book was written in a state of near trance, an artistic possession where the author becomes a slave to the work. Here lies the core of Jung's fear. He diagnosed Nietzsche with psychic inflation. This occurs when the ego, the small part of us that says I, identifies with an archetype, a universal and divine image. Nietzsche could not differentiate himself from the figure of the prophet Zarathustra. He thought he was the sage, that he had the power. Jung knew that the human ego is too small to contain the energy of an archetype. The inevitable result of this identification is the burst, the collapse, the madness. Jung deepened the analysis by introducing the concept of the mana personality. Mana is a force, a supernatural power. When Nietzsche touched the unconscious, he was coated by this aura of magical authority, becoming the archetype of the magician or the wise old man. The danger of the mana personality is that it seduces the individual with a sense of omnipotence. Nietzsche began to write as if he were a god judging humanity, not realizing that, psychologically, he was being devoured by an autonomous force within him. Nietzsche preached total liberation from moral, religious, and social bonds. The Superman, or Übermensch, was to create his own values. Jung, however, saw a mortal danger in this. The human psyche needs roots, tradition, connection with the earth and with common humanity. By cutting all ties, Nietzsche floated into the ether, at the mercy of the winds of the spirit. Jung always emphasized, no tree, it is said, can grow to heaven unless its roots reach down to hell. Nietzsche tried to reach heaven without roots, and he was struck down. In his final notes, already in madness, Nietzsche signed as Dionysus or the crucified. Jung analyzed this as the final rupture of opposites. Nietzsche spent his life attacking Christianity, the crucified, and exalting the instinctive and chaotic life Dionysus. But the psyche seeks wholeness. By repressing the Christian, compassionate side and inflating the Dionysian, ecstatic side, Nietzsche created an unbearable tension. In the end, his mind split in two, unable to reconcile the opposites that Jung would later call the coniunctio oppositorum. For 5 years, Jung conducted a detailed seminar on Zarathustra. It wasn't just a class, It was a public autopsy and a personal exorcism. Jung dissected every chapter, every symbol, showing his students where Nietzsche missed his step. He would point out, "Look, here the unconscious offered an image of balance, but Nietzsche arrogantly rejected it." Jung used Nietzsche's work to teach how not to deal with the unconscious. It was a study on intellectual arrogance in the face of the soul's mystery. Jung's answer to Nietzsche was his own red book. Jung went through a similar crisis, hearing voices and having visions, the confrontation with the unconscious. But unlike Nietzsche, Jung engaged in dialogue with the figures. When the voice of Elijah or Philemon appeared, Jung asked, "Who are you? What do you want?" He kept his ego separate. He treated the visions as objective entities, not as parts of himself. The Red Book is the anti-Zarathustra. It is the record of a man who descended into hell and returned, because he maintained humility before the dark gods. Jung saw in Nietzsche not just an individual drama, but a prophecy for Germany and Europe. Nietzsche's inflation, the desire for power, the contempt for compassion, and the worship of raw vital force were, for Jung, premonitions of what would happen in World War II. The German people, like Nietzsche, would be possessed by the archetype of Wotan, the god of fury and storm. The madness of one sensitive man anticipated the madness of an entire nation. The conclusion of Jung's analysis is an eternal warning for modernity. We live in an era of Nietzsche's, people seeking spirituality without religion, power without responsibility, enlightenment without shadow. The fear Jung had of Nietzsche was the fear of disintegration. The final lesson is that individuation, becoming who you really are, requires a sacred respect for the forces that inhabit us. We must look at Zarathustra with admiration for the beauty, but with terror for the message. Man is a rope stretched between the animal and the overman, and that rope is over an abyss. As we reach the end of this analysis, only the silence that follows the storm remains. Nietzsche's tragedy and Jung's caution are not just chapters in the history of psychology, but navigational charts for the modern soul. We have learned that the search for light, if not accompanied by the recognition of one's own shadow and the humility of our mortal condition, can blind us rather than enlighten us. Greatness lies not in becoming a god, but in bearing the weight of being, fully and painfully. A man or woman conscious of their smallness before the infinite. Jung survived because he had a family, a job, and bricks to lay in his tower at Bollingen. He had roots that sucked nourishment from the black earth while his mind traveled the stars. Nietzsche, in his alpine solitude, became pure spirit, and spirit without a body dissipates in the wind. The final lesson echoing through the decades is that true wisdom does not remove us from the world, but returns us to it with a transformed gaze, capable of seeing the sacred in the most simple and profane things. Take this truth with you: no tree can grow to heaven if its roots do not reach down to hell. Do not fear your unconscious, but never bow to it as if it were your absolute master. Be the king of your own inner kingdom, dialoguing with the forces that dwell within you, without ever allowing them to occupy the throne of your conscious self. Balance is the key that prevents the dream from becoming a nightmare. If this content struck a deep chord in you, if it made something vibrate that was dormant, then your next step is inevitable. Do not let this reflection die here. Like this video to mark your presence on this journey. Share it with those who also seek truth beyond the surface, and subscribe to the channel. Together, we will continue to unravel the mysteries of the soul, keeping our feet on the ground and our eyes on the horizon, until we meet again.